All right, hello everybody. Welcome, HTML5 Mobile Web Development. My name is Jake Carter. This week is just going to be an overview week. I want to walk through some of the demos that you'll be building throughout the course and make sure we have our environment set up and ready to go for next week so we can hit the ground running. Some of the applications I'll be demoing today are going to be a Twitter application. With that, you'll learn how to use Ajax to request data offline. You'll learn how to use the offline storage. We're going to be caching our tweets so that if the user goes into an elevator or loses connection for some reason, we can still show the data that they've already downloaded. And we'll learn how to use orientation detection to display a map of local tweets whenever you rotate the device into landscape. We'll also go over a contact application, also going to be using the offline storage to store the contacts that you add into it. We're going to go over how to display the appropriate on-screen keyboard using the new form types, so that if the user's trying to enter in a number or an email address, we can display a correct keyboard for that task. And then lastly, I'll show you a media application that uses the new HTML5 video and audio tags, which are a great plugin-free way to add rich content into your applications. Throughout the class, I'm going to be demoing things on my iPhone, an iPad, and then we're also going to use the simulators on the computer. So you're going to see things demoed in a couple different fashions. So with HTML5, we have some great new elements that we can use. We have some semantic elements, such as the section, the nav, and the header, which are great for segmenting out your application in a semantic way. Semantic elements are important because of things like accessibility. It's probably the most important thing. If you put your navigation into a nav element, then the browser knows that the contents inside the nav element is navigation, obviously, and can alert the user about that information, that's important to the page. So accessibility is super important. We're also going to go over some new custom drawing elements, the canvas and the JavaScript APIs that go along with the canvas element. Canvas element is great for custom drawing, and again, it's a plugin-free way to add some rich content into your applications. We'll also go over the video and audio tags, which are an HTML5 standard now. You don't have to worry about how do I, add this plugin in to get video and audio working. It just works, so it's really great. So Ajax, I mentioned a second ago. You've probably heard of Ajax. You might have used it to hack together a script. A brief overview of what Ajax is. Ajax is a way to using JavaScript to request information from a backend server. That backend server is probably running some sort of server-side scripting, PHP, .NET, Python, something on the back end that is gonna possibly go to a database, grab some information, or even go out to a separate web server altogether. And then it'll package that information up, typically using XML or JSON, and then return that back to your JavaScript in order to update the page. We're not going to be using XML in this class, but we will be using JSON for getting our tweets from Twitter. Don't worry if you've never used JSON. I'll explain it when we get to it. But just know that it's a way to pass information in a way that JavaScript knows how to handle. It's easily parsable by JavaScript. So sometimes it's easier to display information differently on a portrait versus landscape. Sometimes you may want to change how something looks depending on what orientation you're in. And with HTML5, we have two easy ways to do so. We have the new CSS Media Queries, and we have some JavaScript functions and properties that let us know what orientation the device is in. CSS Media Queries are basically just a way to only include CSS based on certain conditions. The two most popular conditions you'll probably end up using will be orientation or screen size. So you can use CSS Media Queries to only include CSS into your application. If it's on the iPad, you can specify the iPad screen size or the iPhone screen size or something like that using screen size, and then obviously orientation we'll use. So it's a super easy way to get CSS to understand what orientation your application is in. And I also mentioned JavaScript. With JavaScript in HTML5, we have an event that will get fired, or that you can listen for, that will get fired when the orientation actually changes. So you can get alerted right whenever that orientation changes, and then take action on that. So in the past, whenever you wanted to get the user's current location, you would have to ask them to type it in. On mobile devices especially, this can be extremely cumbersome. So it's great now that we have geolocation built into the HTML5 browsers. No more typing anymore. All you have to do is ask the user, they OK it, and then the browser will then let your application know its location. And another great thing is it doesn't require a native app. It's all running in the browser. We're going to use this in our Twitter application to grab the local tweets, and then we're going to display them in a map when it goes into landscape orientation. So offline storage, I mentioned earlier. The offline storage, one of the offline storage technologies that we'll be using is Web SQL database. Like I said earlier, we're going to use this to store the user's tweets, and we're also going to use it in our contacts application. If you've never used SQL or don't even know what a database is, don't worry too much about that. I'll explain all of that when we get to it. Just know that this Web SQL database is offline storage. So there's new form input types to HTML5 that let us display the appropriate keyboard, as I mentioned earlier. It's, like I said, it's cumbersome, especially on these mobile devices, to type this information in. But now we can display the appropriate keyboard. We can display a keyboard for the email address that has the @ symbol right there at the bottom. You don't have to hit the modifier key to find it. It's a great user experience to just be able to, if they have to type something in, make it easy on them. So you're also going to learn about the new video and audio elements. Again, a plug-in free way to add rich content into your application. You'll be creating an application that will display these a video that you can play. We're going to use the iPad simulator because on the iPhone it takes up the full screen. You don't get the full effect of how the video tag really works. So we're going to use the iPad simulator for that. And then we have an audio application that you'll be able to change the audio tracks on the fly. We'll make custom buttons to play and pause. So you'll learn how to access the audio and video elements via JavaScript. And we're also going to create a custom progress bar. So if you wanted to create a custom progress of how far into the audio you are, you'll learn how to do that when we get to it. And the last thing we'll be covering is the new Canvas APIs. Basically, if you don't know, an API just stands for Application Programming Interface, and all it really is a collection of functions that you can call that do things. In this case, they draw. The Canvas API is pretty powerful. It's pretty low level, but there's a lot you can do with it, from drawing simple shapes to complex patterns and paths. Which you'll learn about. Bezier paths are what they're called, and you'll learn about those when we get to them. You can also do photo manipulation with them. You can scale, rotate, draw backwards, inverted, and you can also do pixel level manipulation. So if you wanted to write some sort of blur script for an image, you can totally do that using the Canvas APIs. You can also do some basic animations. This is all driven via JavaScript, so it's all interactive as well. So if you wanted to create a simple game or something like that, it can totally be done with the Canvas APIs. So now I just want to walk you through a demo of the applications just so you get a better understanding of what we're going to be doing. So here's our Twitter application we'll be working on. You're going to learn how to use CSS gradients, a great way to add a rich feel to something without having to add images into it. You're not going to notice this, but what it's doing is grabbing the tweets, adding them to the database for offline storage. So if we were to go offline, all the tweets would still be there. We're going to have this profile view, which I might not have noticed, but there was a little CSS transition on that to view profiles. And we can go back home, little transition to go back. So that's the basics of our Twitter application. We're also going to create this contacts list application. This is all using offline storage. The only thing it needs the internet for is grabbing those avatar, the buddy icons, because it's grabbing those from Twitter. So we can go in and add somebody. It's going to be using the custom keyboards. Well, not custom, but the appropriate keyboards down here. So age, it shows me the number keyboard, and email. We have the @ symbol right there. I didn't have to hit the number modifier to get to it, and even the URL, no space. We have the .com, the /. Some pretty useful keys there for entering URLs. Let's see. And the others are on the iPad. Let me get those up. Now we're zoomed in too far, but that's okay. So here is our Twitter application again. We have a custom web font there at the top in the navigation or in the header. And this is really what I wanted to show. When we go into landscape, asks for the user's location. We're going to OK that. Pulls up a map, and there's some local tweets. And there's it refreshing. So there's some local tweets. Let's see. Also going to do audio and video. Again, plugin free way to do this. You may not notice, but the video is also rotated a bit. We can do that with CSS now on the video tag. We can play it. That's what I get for running a beta OS. We can also go full screen. And go back down. Let's see. We also have this audio application. We can play some tracks here. Yeah. All right. We can change the audio on the fly. These are my GarageBand makings. And we have the custom progress there at the top. Custom buttons using JavaScript to interact with the audio tag, and a little bit of CSS to change the buttons whenever they get pressed on. Let's see. So here's some things that we've done using the Canvas APIs. like I said, we can draw simple shapes. We can draw gradients. We can do solid fills. We can do alpha transparencies, so we can add some transparency into our drawing. We can do gradients. The gradients can have transparencies, and we can even do patterns. So that last one there is a tileable pattern. If we were to make that square, bigger, it would tile and fill in. Or we can also do, obviously, some simple lines. We can do arcs, so we can make circles. And then we can also do the Bezier curves. And there are two different types of Bezier curves that you'll learn about when we get to this. Oh, it's the camera. It's focusing on itself. Yes. And then week 10, we're also going to be doing Canvas API stuff. Let's see. You'll learn about the composition. All of these things are being drawn exactly the same way. We're just changing how they're being composited, which is essentially just changing how they're layered. So on this first one, everything's drawn normal. This is the default composition model. The second one is a source in, I believe. So it's keeping everything inside the square. And then the third one there is it's removing where they overlap. So there's some pretty interesting effects you can get using just by changing the composition model. So here are the images I mentioned earlier. All of these are being drawn using the canvas tag. They're all the same image. I'm just drawing them differently. So the first one there is just drawn normal. The second one is drawn scaled, I believe, 2 times. The middle one there, this one, is the same image just cropped into the dog's eye, and then the last one there is the same one. It's also just scaled. So there's a lot of different ways that you can draw images using the canvas tag. It's pretty powerful. And then these, again, are all the same image. The first one drawn normally. The second one is using a translate, which is basically, it's pretty complicated to talk about right now, but it's basically just a way to move the coordinate space you're drawing in. It's mostly used to make drawing easier on the developer, because then you can draw everything as if your x, y is at 0, 0, and then basically what I did for that rotation, to make it rotate around the center, you move the 0, 0 to the middle, and then you rotate, and then you can move the image using the translate. And then the bottom one there is just the same image drawn upside down and backwards. So you can, like I said, you can also do animation. Here's a simple animation I did. It's just a ball falling and fading out. Let's move it about here and refresh. So all that using canvas tag and JavaScript. So I also stated that the animations can be scriptable. The canvas tag can be scriptable. So this one, wherever you tap, it randomly creates a ball and it falls. So there's some pretty cool things you can do with the canvas tag. These are pretty simple, but once you learn the basics, I'm sure you can go out and create something a lot more impressive than this. So I believe that's it for the demos. Are there any questions yet?
Yeah, we have a question in the Seattle audience, so he's going to grab the mic. 1 second.
Thank you. The geolocation, is that saved as a cookie? Does it persist, or does it ask it every time you use that map application or wherever?
Where the alert popped up asking the user for their permission.
Yes.
On the iPhone, it will ask twice, and after they've accepted twice, it just assumes that they're going to accept it every time. So after the second time, it will cache that and it won't ask them anymore. On other devices, I'm not 100% sure. I would have to look into that, but I know on the iPhone it will cache it after 2 acceptances.
Okay, and then I have a bunch of questions from the chat room. One person asked, with Apple constantly changing their screen size, is there a good way to determine whether or not you're on mobile device? And you are going to cover that, but I just wanted to mention that because we are talking about a bunch of different devices. We have the iPhone, we have the iPad, we have Android, and then those are changing all the time. So
yeah, there are ways to do that also that I wasn't going to go into, but I can totally put onto the forum. Whenever your application or whenever a browser requests something from your application, it passes something called user agent, which gives a lot of information about the browser. So you can sniff that and then use that to determine what browser they're on. And so you can get some information from that.
Okay. And then how iPhone, iPad-centric are the features that you've been talking about today? Are all of them going to work on Android, some of them?
Most of them will also work on Android. And some of them right now will only work on Android.
Okay.
But for the majority of them are cross-platform, and I will mention when they're not.
Okay,
so
excellent. And some of the other phones now, like BlackBerry, have WebKit-based browsers. So
unfortunately, I don't have a BlackBerry to test these things on, and I can't go installing all of the simulators, so it would be hard for me to know.
Yeah.
But like you said, a lot of them are running WebKit, so a lot of this is going to be cross-platform.
Excellent. Okay.